Thank you very much to our program directors, Comrade Jackie Soroke and MEC Faith Mazibuko. I would first like to acknowledge the family, our mother, May Alice, Rahadi, Luisa, my sister Sauda, and the four brothers, distinguished leaders who are here representing the different organizations of the liberation movement, in particular, the leadership of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania in its various generations, the stalwarts of the PAC and APLA who are with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge the leadership of the clergy, Bishop Makhura, Bishop Mtambo, and all the deacons who are here with us, members of the diplomatic corps representing various countries, sons and daughters of the African soil. We are gathered here today to bid our final farewell to a great patriot, a national hero, and a Pan-Africanist par excellence who belonged to a special generation of South Africans. On behalf of the Gauteng provincial government, and indeed on behalf of the President of our Democratic Republic, we have decided to comply in line with the Constitution of our Republic, which impels us, firstly, to recognize the injustices of the past, to honor those who suffered and sacrificed for justice and freedom in our land, and to respect those who have worked tirelessly to build and develop our country. As we have heard, many distinguished South Africans who have spoken here, giving testimony to the lives and times of Ntate Philip Kgosana. Ntate Kgosana's name belongs to the roll call of honor. The heroes and heroines of our struggle who suffered and sacrificed enormously for justice and freedom in our land. And the message we get out of his life, out of the book of his life, is that freedom was not free. Bani, it is us who come to the family to say thank you. We are gathered here from different political organizations, from different sectors of society to say to the family, thank you. We say thank you for sharing with us Ntate Kgosana. We say thank you for understanding his mission and purpose in life. We say thank you and thank you and thank you. We have decided to honor him this way after consultation and at the request of the Pan-Africanist Congress leadership, with which we have been working, and for the first time we had with the PAC this year a commemoration of Sharpeville on the 21st of March in Sharpeville. We worked with the leadership of the PAC, and this indeed is a fitting tribute to the life of Ntate Philip Kgosana. It is indeed therefore the best tribute we pay to him, that on an occasion like this, we also commit ourselves as the representatives of the people of our country, that we should honor all those who suffered and sacrificed, regardless of which party they belonged. And there are still many and there are still many in the PAC, in the Black Consciousness movement, we are going to honor. We will be working with the leadership of the PAC as the provincial government of Gauteng immediately to work on the exhumation and reburial of 4 PAC cadres who were hanged because they too deserve a decent reburial for their contribution to freedom in our country. I would like to take the opportunity to thank President Jacob Zuma for responding positively to our request as the provincial government for this distinct honor. I agree, Bishop Makhura, that this is not enough. It is only the beginning. At all times, Philip Kgosana would always start his address by saying, "Sons and daughters of African soil." And indeed, as we gather here to pay our last respect and mourn his passing, this great giant of the liberation struggle, it is important to commit ourselves to continue the struggle. Today, we bid farewell to a selfless leader who dedicated his entire life to the service of humanity and to the cause of Africa. He has earned a pride of place in the roll call of great African revolutionaries ever to have emerged in South Africa. One thing we will always remember is that iconic picture of the young Philip Kgosana leading multitudes of people in the anti-pass march in Cape Town. And this image and this picture will forever be etched in our minds. 30,000 odd people, as we have heard here. For something very important is his legendary organizing skills and his capacity to organize the masses for, as he says in his own autobiography, organizing those numbers on the 30th of March, 1960, is the stuff that belongs to a legend, and it scared the hell out of the apartheid authorities. We remember him for his bravery, his humility, his integrity, what the bishop earlier on called his ruthless ethics. We remember him also for his critical mind and his consistency. He was consistent up to the end. He never wavered in his beliefs. He never compromised in his commitment to genuine freedom for Africans and the liberation of all humanity. Of course, we cannot talk of Philip Kgosana without thinking about that generation that shaped his thinking and outlook. And we heard from some of them today, including Nathaniel Masemula. And he was amongst that generation that shaped him. Some of them were in the Youth League of the ANC in the 1940s. But we know politically his beliefs were shaped by none other than that great Pan-Africanist thinker and revolutionary, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. And it's indeed true, as he says in his own autobiography, that Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe left a lasting impression on him. He shaped his political thought and his leadership posture to the end. So as we bid farewell to Ntate Kgosana today, one of the mistakes we must admit we have made over the past 23 years of our democracy is that we have not paid adequate attention to honoring and giving full recognition to that rich galaxy of heroes and heroines that participated in the various and diverse forms of struggle and in different organizations of the oppressed. And some of them, we saw them here today. That galaxy of heroes and heroines, They fought for freedom. They sacrificed their youth. They went everywhere in the world, not just on behalf of the PAC, but on behalf of the people of South Africa, fighting for freedom. And for this, we honor all of you, the veterans and stalwarts of our liberation struggle. We honor you today. We take a bow for you. And I wouldn't mind saying, let's give the veterans who are standing here another big round of applause. And that includes the veterans who are speaking here, Ntate Masimula and Ntate Mtswenyane. Let's give them a big round of applause. And as a people, we must be very proud, for they are living and walking monuments. We must be very proud, and we must never forget that freedom was not free. We must always remember that many in our country died and others died elsewhere in the continent fighting for freedom. So we must continue to work hard for the cause of freedom, and we must never tire. For what we were celebrating yesterday, it's more and better described as independence rather than full freedom. For full freedom is yet to come. I would like to quote from Philip Kgosana himself when he said, and I quote, "At this stage of our struggle, we have a choice before us. Are we still prepared to be half human beings in our fatherland, or are we prepared to be citizens, men and women in a democratic, non-racial South Africa?" He goes on to say, "Sons and daughters of Africa, there is a choice before us. We are either slaves or free men. That's all." Close quote. We must not behave like we are half free. We are either free or slaves, as he would say. So we must fulfill all the dreams and aspirations that inspired millions of our fellow Africans to join the struggle for freedom. And one of those things that inspired them is the land question. So we must continue the fight to ensure that the land is returned to the people of our country, especially the Africans. The other important question that inspired the struggle was about access to the means of life if you have learned economic transformation and economic participation. We must continue the struggle for economic transformation, real, meaningful economic transformation, until all our people, especially the Africans, are at the center of our economy. The struggle for access to free education, to housing, to healthcare must continue as well. And we say, because we, unlike those in the PAC, we in the ANC are in charge of government. And I want to make it clear today that when we make mistakes at the ANC in government, we let many, many Africans down. When we make mistakes, we let many, many liberation movements down, because that confirms a stereotype. When we don't govern properly, when we allow corruption, when we allow state capture, we send a message that Africans cannot govern and that liberation movements are inherently corrupt. We must not do that, because we are letting many, many people down like Philip Kgosana. When we waste the opportunity our people have given us to transform this country and ensure each of our citizens has access to decent livelihood, when we waste that opportunity, either because we are fighting amongst ourselves or we are lining our own pockets, we are letting many, many people down. And we are sending a message that liberation movements can only fight for freedom, but once they attain freedom, they cannot run a country properly. And that's a wrong message to send. Ntate Kgosana was a man of principle, but he was a man of action, as we have heard from many stalwarts who spoke here, who grew up with him. He was a practical and pragmatic man. He came back, and upon returning to the country, he continued the struggle. He participated in many activities, as we have heard, including going back to community life in Winterveld, as well as becoming a councillor in the city of Tshwane. He didn't say he was too big for these things. He didn't say, I trained as a soldier, I trained as a pilot. He did everything that needed to be done. What a wonderful example of humility. And we, our councillors from the ANC and the PAC, I know there are many councillors throughout the country of the PAC, wherever we are, including in Parliament, have a lot to learn about leading with humility, and must never allow ourselves to think we are too big for the task. And power must never run to our head. It is therefore appropriate, as we pay tribute today to Ntate Kgosana and his work in the church and with the church, to also collectively say, Lezalisi dingalaku, Tito Nkosi enyaniso. Lord of truth, please fulfill thy promise. And this is the promise of the kind of Africa and the kind of South Africa we want to be. That's the kind of Africa and the kind of South African Ntate Kgosana fought for and sacrificed his life and his family for. And that is the kind of Africa and kind of South Africa we still have to realize. Fellow compatriots, Ntate Kgosana's book, I would like to quote once more from his autobiography, lest we forget. And I quote, he captured where we are today and the challenge of the liberation movement in a period when it is in power this way. And I quote, the liberation war against the forces of colonial occupation, racism and apartheid is over. But a new struggle for the social and economic emancipation of our people has just set in. He continues to say, this new struggle we find ourselves in is a more difficult and more treacherous one because the enemy is not clearly identifiable. Indeed, sometimes it is not clear whether what appears on the political playing field is an ally, a disguised enemy, or simply a mirage, close quote. We will continue to remember the contributions of Ntate Kgosana to the struggle for independence and liberation in our country. So as we gather here today, let's take the message back home that we need to work together. The Gauteng provincial government, having worked with the Pan-Africanist Congress and the PAC in the run-up to this year's March 21st, commits that we are going to work together, as I've already said. Ntate Kgosana sacrificed everything for the liberation of our country. He said in his book, lest we forget those who he mentioned, many stalwarts of the Pan-Africanist Congress. And in return today, we also say to him, lest we forget. We will never forget him. Robala ka Khotso, the father of our nation. Robala ka Khotso, Tlou. Thank you very much for your contribution to the struggle for freedom. May your soul rest in peace. Re a leboha.